it's our extraordinary pleasure to welcome to the stage WIM Wenders.
Good evening. I hope you're helping me because I'm actually jet lagged.
Welcome back, then. I'm going to ask a question or two, and then on an opening night like this, it's such a celebration. I definitely want to include all of you with some questions. I want to ask. This is one of your early films, but it's not one of the ones that was where you collaborated directly with or there's a credit for Peter Handke, but I understand that he was an inspiration on some level for the film. Can you talk about where this story came from?
Chuck Berry. The first frame came out of the song that's in the film, and that's why it's in the film. Memphis, Tennessee, the song about a man who wants to make a contact to a woman, and you realize it's a little girl. And the film became a necessity for me because I made 3 films before, and I was young, and you should think I should have been happy, but I wasn't, because I realized, yes, I had made 3 films, but all 3 had been based on other movies somehow. My first student film, Summer in the City, was based on my admiration for Cassidy. And the goalie's anxiety at the penalty kick, which were actually incident, was strictly based on his film. Loose. Very loose. But formally, it was language, very much so. And the third film, Scarlet Letter, was based on, I don't know what, it was based on Hawthorne and on historic movies. But I had no talent whatsoever to make a creative movie, and it was a disaster in my book. So after that, I realized I'd made 3 films, and they all had different models, and I didn't really, I wasn't convinced this was for me, this whole movie like that. And I've been working as a break before and as a painter, and I figured I should better go back to either one, unless I could convince myself I could do something that didn't owe anything to anybody else. And that became Alice in the Cities. And it started with that Chuck Berry song, and then actually, because I was too early, I walked around the block and I realized the film started 100 yards from here in Cornelius. And friends of mine had a little house, it's next to the Cornelius Street Cafe, and it was had a pottery in the front. And that pottery was closed for years ago. Each time I walked by, it's still closed. And they had a little house in the back, and the pottery behind the oven had a tiny little, very warm room where I sat. And I wrote the first draft of Alice in the Cities. And I came to the Waverly almost every day to see my film. So the film started being so. And it became a film that I really needed and wanted to prove to myself that I could make movies that were not based on the experience of others. And my idea was that it had to be very simple. I imagined the story of 2 people on the road, and shooting on the road, and shooting in chronological order, and actually trying to make a film that was not written or would write itself. And that became my inspiration. And after the film, I was proudly signing my profession as film director whenever I checked into a hotel, which I'd never dared to do before. It was a little film that did it to me. Was that your question?
Yes, absolutely. I mentioned to the audience at the beginning that you know, several of your early films were unavailable for a long time, and that the foundation has done so much in the last couple of years to not just restore these old movies, but to actually make it possible for them to be seen. I wonder if you can talk about the period of absence for Alice in the Cities over the years. I don't know if it was always present in Germany and just not available in other in much of the rest of the world, but this is really the first time in a long time that people in America have had a chance to see this in Goldie. And can you talk about what it was like to have those films out of circulation?
We weren't all that experienced. We was our production company, the authors company. There were 15 filmmakers and writers, and we had a comic company, and we produced our films. And Alice in the Cities was only the third film produced in that company. And we had a very tiny budget. I had to shoot it in 16 millimeter. And then we made a few prints, and because we had no idea what could happen with the film if it was successful. And then Alice in the Cities caught on and was played abroad, and was actually sold to other countries. And before we knew it, we made, over the next few years, 160 prints from that negative. And anybody who's ever seen a negative after 160 prints knows there's not much left. And the negative of Alice in the City was never duplicated. It was the original negative, and it was basically dead. It was so damaged and had so many scratches and cuts and ruptures and fungus and every disease that can happen within was in it. It was basically lost. We spent 6 months to digitally restore it, and now it's frame by frame, it's about 150,000 frames. Of course, computers help, but a lot of it had to be done by hand, and still there's some, every now and then you see there's some fishy stuff in the film, because we didn't have any better material, and some of the shots looked still pretty bad, because we had to finally restore it from an old print, because the negative was too damaged. So a couple of scenes had to be restored from existing prints, and that was then again another 2 or 3 generations there. So we couldn't really get it all back so it would look like new, but most of it did look like new. And it took a long time, and I'm very pleased that Alice is back alive. And the music was also a problem, because I was naive and I put a lot of the stuff in that I liked. You heard some of the stuff. And we just bought music for Germany, the rights, because I didn't know the film was going to play anywhere else. So, and then if you wanted to sell it to other countries, you had to answer the question, did you clear the music rights? I didn't. That's another reason why the film was out of circulation for a long time. So, here it is, and it's still alive. After 42 years. It almost died a very sudden death. I also remember that when I walked around the block, I was still in Cornelia Street, and I had sent the first script to our production company in Munich, and it was basically financed. It was a very small budget for 400,000 marks, which at the time was something like $200,000. And that was there, and I just had to finish the script. So I send the script, and even if I had wanted to make a film without a script, I needed a script to get the money. So I sent the script, and I was done, and I was happy. And a friend of mine invited me to a press screening in Columbus Circle. I know exactly what it was. And I thought that was fancy, because I've never been to press screenings, because I'm not famous. So we went to the 17th floor of that building and saw a screening of Paper Moon by Peter Bogdanovich. Now that is a very fine film, but it killed me because it was the script I just read. Literally. And if you knew that script, and if you saw Paper Moon again, you would understand. I walked out of that screening, went to the next telephone booth, called Munich and said, I'm calling it off. The film is already made. Seriously, I called it off. The production manager, I called the studio people who co-financed it. I said, I can't make the film anymore, it's been made, I'm sorry. And I was really shocked because I had put so much hope on it. So and I walked around and wondered what I was going to do, and I remembered that I still had an open invitation to the Pacific Film Archive in Berkeley to show two of my earlier films, and actually had a ticket to go there, and I thought, well, I guess it will go. And I had an open invitation to visit Samuel Fuller in Los Angeles. Sam had made a film a year before, 2 years before in Germany, a picture on Beethoven Street. Sam heard about it, and I had, as a journalist, interviewed him. And we had sort of struck a friendship in an editing room full of smoke, smoking free cigars during the interview. And at the end of the interview, he had given me his phone number in Los Angeles and said, if you ever come by, give me a call. So I had a phone number in Los Angeles, and I'd never been there in my life. So I did that trip. I went to Berkeley, showed the two films, and then traveled to Los Angeles and called Samuel Fuller, and he actually answered. He remembered me, and he said, come over for breakfast. And I went. And he sort of realized I was sort of sad, and eventually asked me, what's eating you? And I said, well, I just finished writing a movie, and he said, good. I said, no, not good. And it's finance, he said, even better. But I can't do it. And he said, are you a fucking idiot? Why can't you do it? I said, because somebody has done it already. He said, no. And I explained the thing with Paper Moon, and Sam said, I know the film. I helped Peter in the editing room. I know exactly what it is about. So tell me your story. And I swear to God, I told the first 2 lines of my story of this journalist who was traveling, trying to write a story about America, but taking pictures instead, and then meeting this woman with a little girl in New York, and he interrupted me right there and he said, so what? Change it right there. And then he jumped around. He jumped on the sofa of his living room. He jumped on the chairs. He was all over the place, jumping around with excitement, telling me possible variations of my story for about an hour. I didn't remember any of it. But altogether, it gave me the feeling, yes, I had the freedom to do something else. And he was right. I was a bloody idiot. I had the money, and I could just change it. So I said, can I use your phone? And I called in Munich again and said, it's on again. And Sam tapped me on the shoulder and said, good boy. And I really overcame to Sam Fuller. I would not have. So, and I just remembered all of that walking around the block.
All right, we've got time for a couple questions from you guys. So, right down the first row.
When I saw this, I immediately kept thinking of I thought of Gloria, which was a film that came on many years after yours, and the relationship between the boy and Gina Rowlands. And I'm wondering, did you see that film, and what are your feelings about a film that was made decades after yours? And one could say he could have said the same thing you said about Paper Moon after seeing your film.
Let me repeat the question. This person is mentioning that not only are there things in common with Paper Moon, but also the later Cassavetes film, Gloria, and commonality in different stories about the relationships of kids on the run with strangers.
I don't think Sam Fuller was involved in this one, but I'm happy to read his make a note because it's one of my favorite of his. And it's all run in reverse. It's a woman traveling with a little boy. Everything is the other way around. And there's really not all that much in common except for the great feeling of liberty that that film has. I like it.
Other questions? Right there.
With one little exception, the film was shot in chronological order from North Carolina, where we started it, in the city of Surf City in North Carolina. That's where we started because we decided to go down as much south as necessary to find palm trees. And that turned out to be North Carolina. I had stupidly thought we'd find palm trees in Virginia, but I've never been there in my life, so but we had to travel to North Carolina. And from there on to the end, it's all chronological order except the boardwalk. They didn't have a boardwalk down there, and I had it in my head that the film should start on the boardwalk. So we shot the boardwalk afterwards when we came to New York in Far Rockaway. But that's the only scene in the entire film that is not shot in chronological order.
So I'm curious how that has informed your documentary work, which is also a unusual way to do a feature film, but a standard way to do a documentary. So I'm wondering how does one shot
The beauty of shooting in chronological order, as a filmmaker, you would understand immediately, but maybe for the audience is not quite clear. Normally you shoot a film completely out of order. You have a certain number of locations, and then you shoot everything that takes place in that location. If it's the beginning and the end, you shoot that first. And then you shoot it so that it makes sense almost. And that you can structure the film and don't have to go twice to the same place because that would be stupid. So, and I hate that because it takes away any possibility of changing a story as you go along. Because if you shoot the ending in the beginning, and from then on your hands are tied because you have to still get the film to do that ending. So you cannot at some point say, well, I'm not going to turn left, I'm going to turn right, because you're bound to follow an idea that you had before you started. And if you shoot in chronological order, at any given moment you can change the course of the story. And the beauty is that the actors and the crew always know as much as you do. And they're just as informed as you do. And otherwise, in the regular business way of making movies, the director knows so much more than everybody else. And I always love to know as much as everybody else, and I always liked the idea that shooting a film was an adventure for those who made it. And it could only be an adventure if you didn't really know the outcome. So shooting in chronological order for me is one of the great thrills and advantages in filmmaking. And documentaries, yes, given you can do that. In fiction you can almost never do it except if you shoot on the road, and the genre of the road movie forces you to be in chronological order because the road becomes, and the itinerary becomes a script. And I didn't really understand that when we started Alice in the Cities, but in the course of the film I realized that was a dream come true for me, and it was a sort of filmmaking where you really, at any given moment, together with the actors, could decide that the story was going to take another turn, and which was a fantastic treat, really. And I was really thriving on it, and I made the next 3 or 4 films like that. And you have to be your own producer because any producer would be playing.
Well, unfortunately, I have to bring it to a close there, but you're going to have a lot more chances to see.
One more in the very back.
All right, one more in the very back.
The final shot will be train. I had never shot in a helicopter before. Neither had probably my cameraman. And we didn't have much money, so we just hired a helicopter and we shot it handheld,
That's cool.
which is disaster. Because it's shaking like hell, and helicopters are really shaking. And finally we invented a device on our own with the help of my suspenders. We're hanging the camera in the cabin, so it was hanging on my suspenders and I had to hold on to my pants. So it was relatively stable. And we had no walkie-talkie communication with the bloody train. So we went down to every train that was coming, hoping that we would see the window, and then we couldn't see the window. And we were running out of gas on the bloody helicopter. And finally a train came where these two guys were hanging out the window, and we shot it and it worked. And then we had to land, and that was it. Because they were on the train and they needed 2 hours to come back. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. With my suspenders. Thank you all so much.